Right, so it looks like we're reacting to a video from ZackLillipad today called Xbox One, the worst generation to lose. I am not familiar with this creator at all. This was submitted for me to react to by my boy Mac. If you guys have any recommendations for videos to check out, feel free to suggest them. Well, let's get right into it. Let's see what they're talking about here. I'm not really a big proponent of like the console wars. I never really was on a particular side until the finances dictated that I had to be a one or the other. And most of my friends were on PlayStation, so after a while, we just stopped playing on the Xbox side. But you know what? I might be an Xbox sympathizer on the low. You never know. Don't look at me. I don't have a green X on my chest or anything like that.
When we
Let's
talk
get
about
into
the least successful video game consoles of all time, the Xbox One is not really in that conversation, selling a respectable 58 million units. But as the years have gone on since that console's life cycle, it's clear some of the events that took place have left a lasting scar on the Xbox brand as a whole. In 2023, head of Xbox Phil Spencer said the Xbox One generation was the worst console generation to lose. In today's video, I want to take a look back at the Xbox One to figure out what exactly happened and what would lead to such a brutally honest quote from Phil Spencer. Microsoft was feeling pretty good after the Xbox 360 generation, and they had every right to. With just their second ever Xbox console on the market, they were able to go toe-to-toe with industry juggernaut PlayStation. And for most of the generation, they were even able to outperform them. Not only did the Xbox 360 sell extremely well, it is also one of the most beloved and fondly remembered consoles of all time. With its iconic lineup of games and innovative focus on multiplayer gaming and social features, the 360 helped truly establish Xbox as one of the big three, right alongside PlayStation and Nintendo. As they geared up for the reveal of their next console, all they really had to do was build off of that momentum. Rumors first started swirling about this new console around May 2011, commonly being referred to as the Xbox 720 at that time. For the most part, the rumors are what you would expect to see from any new console that we don't know much about. There were the tame, run-of-the-mill rumors about how much more powerful the console would be than its predecessor. Then there were, of course, the absurdities you would see thrown out there, such as one rumor that claimed the console would have a screen on the controller, similar to Nintendo's Wii U. While these promises of more power alongside some wildly made-up rumors were to be expected, there were some other rumors floating out there that were much more concerning. Talk of Xbox 720 not supporting used games or requiring the use of the controversial Kinect accessory were heard frequently.
You know what? I definitely do recall the Kinect being a big a big point of contention from a lot of people. I remember back when like the PlayStation 2 had the the eye toy or whatever, and it was like the put you in the game sort of deal. I might have got finessed out of some coins. Not gonna lie, I might have got finessed out of some coins to try out the eye toy. Those games were terrible, by the way. I was not a fan. I could definitely say I'd rather play other stuff and not me jumping around on camera. I remember Xbox did like that one. Well, I forgot what what awards show were like. Where they were, but they definitely like advertised the Kinect thing in like was you like talking to a kid or a tiger or something like that? They definitely fabricated a whole bunch of nonsense with the Kinect. I definitely remember that, and I was like, what in the shit? This don't even feel right. Someone knows what I'm talking about. You have to know what I'm talking about.
Additionally, there was a common rumor stating that the console would be always on, or in other words, would require a constant internet connection to function, even when using features that would typically require no internet at all.
Yikes.
Now, if there's one thing gamers hate, it's an always online requirement, and I can't blame them for that one bit. Around this time of 2012 and 2013, we saw a few different games try this, and it usually ended up pretty horrifically. The well-documented launch problems that plagued always online games in this era, like Diablo 3 or SimCity 2013, had left gamers scarred. And so the thought of having an entire console built around this was utterly terrifying. Amidst the panic of these always online rumors, we reached the first major misstep of this Xbox generation. Xbox hadn't commented on any of these rumors until one day, a man by the name of Adam Orth, who at the time was creative director at Microsoft Game Studios, decided to send out a tweet. In his now infamous tweet, he stated, "Sorry, I don't get the drama around having an always on console. Every device now is always on. That's the world we live in.
No.
Hashtag deal with it."
Bro,
As you can imagine, imagine,
threw
this
the
tweet sent
hashtag
gamers
deal
into
with
an
it in
absolute
there.
frenzy. Not only did
That,
Orth
yeah,
seemingly
that's a
confirm
quick
the
way
feared
to
always online requirement,
to get the
but his
negative
snarky and
connotation on
dismissive
your
tone
tweet.
was
Don't do
especially
that.
infuriating. As fans tried to voice their concerns
He
to
was
Orth,
feeling
he
sassy
chose
that
to
day.
double down. What would happen if my internet went out? Well, the electricity can go out too. What if I live in an area without good internet accessibility? Well, you shouldn't live there. Orth tried to defend these comments by saying he was talking to a friend, and these statements were meant as a joke towards him, not as an insult to others. But with prior tweets coming a few hours earlier using the same talking points which were not directed at that individual, this excuse becomes harder to believe. And even if you remove the privileged statements he made, Orth had still led many players to believe in the always-on rumors and caused a major PR nightmare for Xbox. Orth quickly left Microsoft a few days later, claiming it was his decision, but the damage was already done. With Xbox still 1 month away from officially revealing its new console, it was already shrouded in controversies. As the days moved closer to this reveal event, there wasn't the level of excitement or anticipation you would expect from a new console showcase. Rather, there was an anxious hesitation as fans worried about what Microsoft would confirm to be true from these rumors. With all of the negative press and concerning rumors stacking up against them, it was time for Xbox to speak for themselves and get across their message to gamers on what they could expect from the next Xbox console. On May 21st, 2013, Microsoft hosted the reveal event, and what would ensue over the next hour and coming weeks would end up defining the entire console generation. The event was a disaster in every sense of the word, considered one of the worst console reveals in gaming history. They start by showing off the console itself and revealing the official name, Xbox One. I've always hated the name of this console, granted I'm a bit biased, as I hate anything that titles itself with the number 1 after an original has already been released.
Martin Shkreli on stage. Yo, Xbox One is a absolutely terrible name. It definitely always kind of threw me off. I was like, what do you mean by that? The original Xbox gotta be the Xbox One. Then they hit the 360, right? The 360, I don't think I understand the naming convention behind that one, because you just end up right back in the same place if you go 360 degrees, right? So the hell going on with that? Then we bring it back to the one. List that. We're not even following the naming conventions that we kind of set up. You're setting me up. You're setting me up and then you're letting me down, bro. I don't like that. If I had to find one reason to not like Xbox, you're letting me down, bro. You're doing it with your whole chest, and I don't think I like that. The hell is an Xbox One?
I think it's confusing and just annoying when speaking out loud. And I mean, seriously, try to have a conversation with someone who doesn't know video games about the original Xbox and the Xbox One and tell me they won't get confused. Regardless of how I feel about the One naming structure, the Xbox One was given that name for a very understandable reason. Xbox's goal with the Xbox One was to make it an all-in-one entertainment platform, home to not just video games, but also your TV, movies, music, and applications as well. This isn't that bad of a concept
all-in-one if you
theory.
really
Most of the console manufacturers were pushing for similar things or had pushed for similar things in the past.
I'm stubborn. I don't like it.
Sony's PlayStation 2 and 3 were famous for their support of DVDs and Blu-rays, making them a go-to entertainment device for many. Even Nintendo was pushing for this around this time with their short-lived Nintendo TV initiative of the Wii U generation. What I'm trying to say is, the idea of Microsoft wanting their console to be an all-in-one entertainment system is not a strange or bad idea whatsoever. The problem was how desperately they tried to sell it. Microsoft chose to spend the entire first 30 minutes of the event talking about TV, movies, and the new Kinect device. We sat there for 10 minutes watching an Xbox representative yell at the Kinect to switch between watching The Price is Right and sports games, or how you could use Xbox Snap to have both a movie and Bing open at the same time. Again, none of these features are inherently bad, especially Xbox Snap, which probably would have done great in today's era of Zoomers needing 3 different videos playing at a single time to stay entertained, but did this all really warrant 30 minutes of our time? Not to mention, all of this new tech and features were being built around Kinect, a device that many hardcore gamers had already written off. The Kinect was a strange device, selling incredibly well out of the gate, but having a lot of problems that turned away most players. And at the end of the day, the Kinect was a device that up until this point was seen as something for casual audiences. And casual audiences probably aren't watching an Xbox One reveal event, nor would they be buying a console day one. Regardless, they finally moved on and started talking about games. Keep in mind, we are 30 minutes into an hour-long showcase at this point, and we are seeing a video game for the first time. The games they did finally show were fine, but nothing overly exciting. It was pretty standard stuff like new sports games, a new Forza, and Call of Duty. They did show Halo though, but it was to announce a TV show, not a game. I'm not trying to discredit the games they showed, but it just wasn't enough to make up for the 30 minutes of TV and movie talk that came before it. The worst part was, this event left people with more questions than answers about some of the rumors regarding always-on connectivity or support of used games. As the press asked these questions, many of Xbox's responses seemed snarky and dismissive, almost like they were annoyed that people wanted these questions answered. One particularly infamous moment came when Jeff Keighley interviewed then Xbox CEO Don Matrick and asked him what a player should do if they don't have good internet access. Matrick's response was to buy an Xbox 360. You can actually hear Jeff fail to hold in his laugh as the CEO of a company unveiling a new product just told consumers to buy the old one instead. Reporters were also able to get them to confirm used games would indeed be restricted by Xbox One. Games would get tied to a user's ID and would then be unable to be sold in the normal ways we're used to. Xbox never got into specifics of how exactly this would work though, claiming they would partner with retailers and/or publishers, allowing them to charge a fee for games being played on a second ID. It was all incredibly confusing and frustrating, and Xbox's initial attitude towards this whole thing, as if players were wrong to feel this way, was certainly not helping. The Xbox One reveal had been a total disaster, and we'll talk later about just how harmful this really was, but for now, Xbox needed to keep the ball rolling as they prepared for another major event with E3 2013. I rewatched Xbox's E3 2013 press conference for this video, and honestly, I expected way worse. The conference itself actually wasn't bad whatsoever, ditching all the talk of TV and voice commands for the Kinect. Most of this conference was spent talking about actual video games, and the games shown were pretty exciting, including some big new exclusive game announcements like Rise on their gaming Sunset
consoles.
Overdrive, and Dead Rising 3. Add into that some other major multi-platform games that made an appearance like Metal Gear Solid 5 and The Witcher 3, and this was genuinely a really strong showing from Xbox. Towards the end of the conference, they had the big moment of announcing the price of the console. It was announced that the Xbox One would retail for $499. Keep in mind, this price point was for the console itself, as well as the Kinect accessory, which would be bundled with every console, whether you wanted it or not. It had been a few weeks since the controversial Xbox One reveal event, and while those issues still loomed large, Xbox fans were understandably feeling a bit better immediately following this E3 showcase. That is, until it was time for Xbox's competitor to hold their press conference. Xbox fans, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we need to talk about PlayStation's E3 2013 press conference as well, because it is a huge part of this story. PlayStation was also promoting their new console at E3 this year, and their conference started off pretty normal. They showed off new games and features that would be coming to the PS4 console, just as Xbox had done a few hours earlier. But then suddenly something changed. The then president and CEO of Sony Computer Entertainment America, Jack Tretton, walked onto the stage with a smile on his face he could hardly contain. As he begins speaking, I can only imagine the horrors of Xbox executives everywhere. Tretton begins going down the list of every controversial Xbox One feature we've spoken about and confirms they won't be present on PS4. With every statement he made, the crowd started going crazier and crazier. It's not
that, you see, I feel like that's the danger of being in like the competitive console space, where you gotta reveal what you guys plan on doing, and then the next guy could come in and be like, fuck what they talking about. I think that's so cook. Oh, by the way, we selling ours for $300. You don't gotta be online all the time. Hey, we got games. Fuck what they doing over there. Yeah, it's like someone is running for president, bro, and you come through like, yo, they policies is trash. Listen up. We gonna do it this way, alright? Like, bro, that's not fair. Let's make a walked out smile like, yeah, we got a big L's.
Often you see one of the big three console manufacturers do something like this, especially nowadays, where they publicly call out the competition. In a matter of minutes, PlayStation went from the cocky, arrogant company we had seen during the PS3 generation to now being the company fighting for the people, giving consumers what they wanted. In my opinion, this moment is genuinely one of the most impactful events in gaming history, both for its effect on the gaming scene of that time, but also its effects on the gaming scene we have today. As if this moment wasn't big enough already, PlayStation had one more thing up their sleeves. At the end of their conference, Sony announced the price of the PS4 to be $399, $100 less than the Xbox One. The crowd went wild again, and as the stage lights faded, you could almost feel that PlayStation had just won the generation before it had even officially begun. With Xbox reeling after the embarrassment they faced at E3, it was clear something had to change. And so on June 19, 2013, just 9 days after the E3 fiasco, Microsoft announced a complete Xbox 180. They announced that the console would no longer require online chat check-ins. Additionally, they would not be placing any sort of restriction on the sale of used games or the act of lending your game to a friend. The
You know
gamers
how
had won,
wacky
their
look
outrage
having
had
to
been
go
heard,
back,
and thanks
like,
to a
we
little help
fucked
from
up, we fucked up.
PlayStation, Xbox was forced to go back on all of their anti-consumer policies.
I guess it's a
Unfortunately,
good look
though,
that they
much of the
had to do
damage
a
was
couple,
already
but still,
done.
you look whack.
The Xbox One officially released on November 22nd, 2013. Reception to the console was pretty positive all around, and the first few years went decently. But as the generation went on, the PS4 took a commanding lead and never looked back. PS4 was able to double the Xbox One in sales by the time it was all said and done. Now, I could sit here and talk about why this happened, but I honestly don't think it's that interesting of a story. The Xbox One had an uphill battle after its controversial reveal, and they were just never able to recover. What I find far more intriguing,
course,
and what
they're
we'll cover
just
throughout
trying
the
to
rest
sell
of this
consoles.
video, is the lasting effect the Xbox One generation has had on the
But you look
entire
back.
Xbox brand. We've seen plenty of consoles come and go, all with varying levels of success, and we've seen countless examples of companies having a miss and then being able to bounce back tremendously just one generation later. But in the case of the Xbox One, it seems that the impact was much more profound. Xbox's current console line, the Series X and S, are also struggling big time, with a recent report stating that the PS5 is outselling them 3-1. According to Xbox themselves, the Xbox One generation may be to
Jeez.
blame, at least somewhat.
3 to
The
1 's
basis
crazy.
for our discussion will be from Phil Spencer's appearance on the Kinda Funny Xcast, which aired on May 4th, 2023. If you haven't seen this interview before, I highly recommend you go and watch the whole thing. Phil was very open and honest throughout, in a way that is rare to see from someone in his position. It was here he said, and I quote, "We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation." Why is this? Well, as Phil himself mentions, most of it boils down to digital game libraries. The PS3 and 360 generation was the first time we could download full games from digital storefronts, as opposed to going out to the store and buying the disc. However, it wasn't until the PS4 and Xbox One generation that it became more common for people to ditch discs entirely. As we reach the end of that generation, and especially nowadays, there are significantly more people buying their games digitally than physically. What this meant was that for nearly a decade, PS4 and Xbox One users were building giant digital game libraries that they understandably would not want to lose. With the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles being fully backwards compatible, this meant your digital game library would move with you, of course assuming you stuck with the same line of consoles. And so for most consumers, the decision of which next-gen console to buy was already made. They would be motivated to stick within the same ecosystem, as it would allow them to continue engaging with their digital libraries instead of having to start all over somewhere new. Unfortunately for Xbox, there were double as many PS4 digital game libraries out there that people would want to stick by. And so once again, Xbox found themselves facing a major uphill battle, having to not only convince someone to buy an Xbox Series console, but also convince that same someone to ditch their last 8 years of digital purchases. It didn't used to be this way. Every console was a clean slate, usually with little to no connection to the previous ones. You could go from a Nintendo 64 to a PS2 to an Xbox 360 without much worry, but nowadays there is way more incentive to stick with one brand and ecosystem. And as Phil
That's
says,
so
the
true.
last generation
so
where
true.
switching console manufacturers was viable for most people was indeed the Xbox One generation, the generation that Xbox lost handily. What this has caused is a scenario where Xbox has been forced to play catch up for the better part of 10 years now. And I think almost everything you've seen out of Xbox over the last decade, both good and bad, all boils down to this fact. The Xbox brand is in a strange place at the moment. As I'm sure you have all seen, Xbox has begun releasing previously exclusive games on rival hardware like PS5 and
That
Switch.
would be so
Games like
sick.
Sea of Thieves or Hi-Fi
We
Rush
need
were
a
among the first
fucking-
batch to make the jump,
but
but we're
a
seeing that
singular
list continue
game
to grow,
console, it's
including the
called
recent
game.
announcement that Indiana Jones The
Hey,
Great
you get
Circle
to
will be coming to
license it,
PS5 just a
even
few months
display your
after its
shit,
Xbox release.
or all
It
your
has started to
devices.
feel like Xbox is slowly creeping towards becoming a
Crossplay for
third party
everything. Let's
instead of
go.
a console
Backwards
manufacturer. Is
compatibility.
this simply
We in
because of the
there.
poor sales of Series X and S, or is there something more here? I think a big reason for it is two major pivots Xbox made during the struggles of Xbox One. The first is their affinity for big acquisitions. Xbox first-party games struggled throughout the Xbox One generation, and was a big reason why that console couldn't keep up with the PS4. It was a strange phenomenon, as Xbox had been pretty consistent with their first-party output since the original Xbox. And while the Xbox One generation started out decently, things got worse as the years went on. Many first-party releases were of questionable quality, and there were long drought periods where players were getting almost nothing. With Xbox struggling to supply meaningful first-party games on their own, they looked outward. In 2020, they purchased Bethesda, and at that time were saying their games would now be exclusive to Xbox and PC. For the first few years, this held true, with games like Starfield and Redfall skipping rival platforms. Meanwhile, Xbox had their eyes on an even
I would
bigger
love that.
target.
That would
In
work
2022, they
perfectly,
announced
bro.
they would be purchasing Activision Blizzard. Immediately, the questions
me
began
cop
of
my
whether this
shit,
meant
let me
games
buy
like
what I
Call
wanna
of
buy.
Duty would no longer be on PlayStation. And at first, Xbox was not committing that they wouldn't make Call of Duty an exclusive. But then the FTC got involved and it was a huge thing, and in the end they made a deal with PlayStation to keep COD coming to the platform. And really, as the years have gone on, it seems that basically none of Activision Blizzard's games will be exclusive to Xbox. Meanwhile, more and more games within Bethesda are not going to stay exclusive either, including the previously mentioned upcoming Indiana Jones game and Doom: The Dark Ages. It was a nice power play by Xbox to buy these teams, but in all honesty, I don't think there was any world where they could have realistically kept these games exclusive. And the main reason for that is Game Pass. Game Pass first launched in 2017 during the middle of the Xbox One generation. It was one of Xbox's biggest moves of that generation to try and make a splash.
I thought Game Pass was like genius. I really think it's a super dope concept. I haven't really looked into like the pricing and the models and the plans for all of it though. But like I'm sure Game Pass has like hemorrhaged money over time. They gave out like a ton of value for that shit. But I'm sure that shit is definitely it shanked Xbox in the back a couple times. There's no way you're not losing some type of money. She giving out some stuff like release date, like available on the Game Pass the day of release is crazy. I'm about to pay this 17 bones per month. Yeah, that's it. I'm about to pay the 17 bones per month and just be happy with the game. I mean, I guess Xbox also does still do the Xbox Live membership you gotta get. Hello, bud. Yeah. I can definitely imagine that the money is just leaving the pockets, bro. They had some really good games on there, though. They really did.
Game Pass is a simple subscription service that grants players access to hundreds of games, but what makes Game Pass different is the inclusion of Day 1 games coming to the service the same day they are released. This included major first-party games such as Sea of Thieves and Forza Horizon 4 releasing on Game Pass the very same day they were released for purchase. This was huge, no other company was doing this at the time, and it made Game Pass the absolute best deal in gaming. I often joke about Game Pass saying it is literally too good of a deal, to the point where I don't even understand how they're making any money off of it. In fact, Game Pass is such a good deal that if you own an Xbox console, it really doesn't make any sense to not have it. In other words, a lot of Xbox players find themselves very rarely actually buying games, instead just playing everything on Game Pass. In a sense, Xbox introduced a subscription service so good, they accidentally trained their audience to never buy games again. This becomes quite a big problem after acquiring two of the biggest third-party studios in the world, and now having to support them. Game Pass has a ton of subscribers across Xbox and PC, and with them recently raising prices and adding more expensive tiers, Game Pass definitely does make a lot of money, but it doesn't make enough money to support all of Bethesda and Activision Blizzard single-handedly. That's just not possible. And so Xbox was forced to look for other ways to increase their revenue, leading to the games on rival platforms pivot that we've seen. And so that brings us to the present day. With Xbox console sales struggling and their previously exclusive games coming to rival platforms, many are wondering if Xbox will even be making consoles for much longer. For now, Microsoft's messaging has indicated that they will give it one more go with another new console generation. But if that one fails too, there is a legitimate scenario where Xbox no longer makes consoles and instead goes the route of Sega. It's pretty interesting to lay it all out like this and see it this way. The massive miscalculations Xbox made during the reveal of the Xbox One led to a deterioration of the Xbox brand and a failed Xbox One generation. This failed generation led Xbox into the Game Pass and acquisition era, two things that actually don't mix together very well at all. This very thing has cornered them into a position where they're forced to act more as a third party than they had ever anticipated. I find this timeline and story incredibly interesting, and I am so intrigued to see where Xbox tries to take things from here. I hope Xbox can find some way to bounce back, because we need that kind of competition in the console space. But for now, Xbox appears to be on a crash course to become a third-party publisher. Ironically, they would probably make more money doing so, as they would genuinely become the biggest third-party publisher out there in an instant. But will they dare to make that drastic of a decision, or will they continue floating along as they are now, making consoles while sprinkling more and more games onto rival hardware. Only time will tell. But for now, I think it's increasingly clear why Phil Spencer said what he said about the Xbox One. Despite performing fine, the Xbox One has had a decade-long lasting impact on every decision they make and every pivot they try to take. And that is why I wholeheartedly agree with Phil that the Xbox One generation was the worst generation to lose.
That was really tight. That video was from ZackLillipad. Again, this is a creator I have not heard of before, but I definitely like how everything was kind of laid out and it wasn't much like yapping. Definitely a lot of like facts presented and the historical references to bringing stuff back to what actually is relevant to the video at hand. Definitely made this a pretty easy, soothing watch. I've never really been super into the whole console war thing, like I said earlier. Like I just ended up getting the consoles that like my friends were on mostly until I got into the content creation space, and it was kind of like, well, most of the player bases are on one console opposed to the other, but like I can definitely see the value in something like an Xbox Game Pass and all that. Like even when it was on like just the PC Game Pass for me. Would I buy an Xbox in 2025? Fuck it, we can go back to like 2019. No. I would not. From then on, I get is like I mainly use my PC for like viewing content or whatever, so I don't think I would need to, you know, hook up the old Xbox to jump on Netflix. But I can see how like you're trying to appeal to that casual base that might have the good old Xbox sitting around. Like maybe you got the lady friend over, maybe you want to throw on something on Netflix or HBO Max. But the fact that they had like an hour-long presentation about to reveal it, and they were like, we're gonna spend 30 minutes talking about apps on this gaming console, it's crazy. But you know what? I bet there was somebody who did like market research and molecular. We could probably push so many units if people think about this to run their DVDs. Somebody did the research and was like, yo, this is he. But yeah, they definitely did get cooked up, in my opinion. But I know there are some people that are like super ride or die for their consoles since like way back when. Kind of crazy to me to be like dead serious, blindly faithful to the to those companies they're selling to you. But you know how that goes. Anyway, check out the top of the description for a link to this video. Very dope stuff from Mr. ZackLillipad. I kind of want to see some more content.